Hi, all of us who are joining us on the live stream. You're joining the Revere Democratic City Committee meeting, which will begin shortly. Who's Last Call radio show?
That is Ward 3, Giancarlo.
Do we know who NQ
All right. Bob, you can turn to me. Oh. All right, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Revere Democratic City Committee's Candidates Forum. Thank you. I want to start off by saying thank you to Revere TV for providing us a live stream tonight through their Facebook and YouTube channel. And for those who are not online, you can also watch this on Comcast Channel 8 or 1072. And you can also watch it on RCN Channel 3 or 61. I'm going to start off and introduce myself. My name is Dimple Rana, and I am the chair of the Revere Democratic City Committee. And our committee's leadership includes Steve Morabito and Danielle Osterman as our co-chairs, Juan Pablo Jaramillo as secretary, and Patrick Keefe is the treasurer of the committee. So tonight's forum includes presentations by the following candidates. We have for the Governor's Council District 6 race, incumbent Terrence Kennedy and candidate Lena Fontes. For Suffolk Register of Probate, we have incumbent Felix Arroyo and candidate Kirby Robertson. For the 16th Suffolk District race, we have Councilor at Large Jessica Giannino, and we have also Joe Gravalisi. And then finally, for the U.S. Senate, we have incumbent Senator Ed Markey and Congressman Joe Kennedy III. So I'm going to turn it over to Shema now, who's just going to go over a few details and get us started.
Sorry, I will also be providing translation. So My name is Juan Jaramillo. I will be doing some translation for today's Democratic City Committee. Mi nombre es Dimple Rana. Yo soy la presidenta del Comité Demócrata de Revere. Hoy estaremos escuchando de los candidatos al Congreso, al Senado. Tenemos al senador Markey y al congresista Kennedy. Tenemos los candidatos a la Cámara de Representantes Estatal, la concejal Jessica Giannino y el candidato Joe Gravalisi. Tenemos para la oficina de corte de familia a Kirby Robertson y al registrador actual Felix Arroyo. Y tenemos para el consejero del gobernador, tenemos a Congressman Kennedy y a Lena Fontes. Y ahora vamos a ver una presentación de la compañera Shema.
One, I think she's in the waiting room. Then can you let her back in?
Okay. Is this whose number? Oh, there she is. That's her. Got it. Seven two.
All right. So we have Shema Husani up next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shema Husseini. I am of Ward.
Hola, Shema Husseini. Yo soy la presidenta del comité del distrito 2.
It is very important to vote. It is a very important year to vote. We have upcoming primary elections on September 1st and the general election on November 3rd for candidates who are running for state office, such as the U.S. Senate, the state representatives, Register of Probate, Governor's Council, and for the President and Vice President of the United States. I am going to go through. You want me to slow down?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Tenemos elecciones primarias este año, tenemos para las estatales y de Congreso el 1 de septiembre, y tenemos las elecciones también federales y también estatales y de Congreso el 3 de noviembre.
I am going to go through super important information on how to vote by mail in Massachusetts in 2020. If you are registered to vote, you are eligible to vote by mail for the primary and general elections in 2020. Sorry.
Yo les voy a compartir información bastante importante de cómo votamos por correo, la seguridad de nuestras casas para las elecciones que vienen este año.
You have to take a few steps to vote because your ballot will not just show up at your door. There are 5 steps you need to take to successfully vote in mail by 2020.
Tenemos 5 pasos que debemos de seguir para poder votar exitosamente este año 2020. You're muted, Shema. Sorry. Unmute yourself, please.
Dimple, this is where you shared the screen.
Juan, can you share the screen?
Yep.
To check to make sure that you are registered to vote. If you are not registered to vote, it is easy and you could do it online. Go to registertovotema.com or directly visit the Secretary or State's website to register or pre-register to vote. Update your address.
Usted se haya registrado para votar. Si usted no se ha registrado, lo puede hacer siguiendo el enlace registertovotema.com.
The deadline to do this for the primary is Saturday, August 22nd, and the deadline for the general election is Saturday, October 24th.
Las fechas límites para registrarse para las primarias que se van a llevar a cabo el 1 de septiembre es el sábado 22 de agosto y para la elección general del noviembre 3 será el sábado, octubre 24.
Get and complete your application for a mail-in ballot by August 26th.
Es importante que usted, para poder votar por correo, llene y complete su aplicación antes y devuélvala a la oficina de elecciones de la ciudad de aquí al 26 de agosto.
You might have already received your application in the mail, which looks like a postcard if you fill out on the other side.
Es probable que usted haya ya ahora recibido su aplicación para votar por correo, que parece como una postal. Solo la tienen que firmar y ponerla otra vez en el correo.
Submit your mail-in ballot application. Don't forget to sign it.
La pueden echar al buzón y no olviden firmarla.
It has to be received by the Revere Elections Department by 5 p.m. on the Wednesday before the election.
Esta solicitud para votar por correo debe de ser recibida por el Departamento de Elecciones de Revere el miércoles antes de las elecciones primarias.
For the primary, it is August 26th, and for the general election, it is October 28th by 5 p.m. in the evening.
Para las primarias sería el 26 de agosto a las 5 de la tarde y para las elecciones generales sería el 28 de octubre igual a las 5 p.m.
Get and complete your mail-in ballot.
Y después ya usted le llegará su tarjetón de votación, llénelo y complételo.
Watch for it to show up in your mailbox. The election department will be sending them out.
Asegurándose de que esté llegando a su buzón, asegúrese de buscarlo todos los días para cuando llegue el tarjetón, ahí mismo lo puedan llenar y devolverlo.
If you do not receive it, you can contact the elections department to have it resent, or you can pick it up at the Revere City Hall in the elections department.
Si usted no lo recibe, entonces puede contactarse con la oficina del City Hall de elecciones y pedir allá que le den su tarjetón o ir en persona.
Submit your mail-in ballot. For the primary elections, all the ballots must be received by 8 a.m., the close of polls on election day.
Todos los tarjetones deben de estar devueltos antes del 1 de septiembre para la primaria a las 8 p.m. en la oficina de elecciones de la ciudad de Revere.
It doesn't matter if you drop it off at City Hall or send it in the mail.
No importa si es importante que lo lleven al City Hall o que lo mande por correo.
Do remember that if you decide to mail it, to leave extra time so it arrives to the elections department by close of polls at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, September 1st.
Pero si usted decide mandarlo por correo, recuerde que debe estar en el City Hall antes de las 8 p.m. el día de las elecciones 1 de septiembre.
If you don't want to vote by mail, you can still vote in person.
Si usted no quiere votar por correo, todavía puede votar en persona.
There is early in-person voting week before the primary from August 22nd to the 28th, and 2 weeks before the general election from October 17th to the 30th.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the dates again one more time?
Yeah, so for the primary, it's from August 22nd to the 28th, and for the general election, it's October 17th to the 30th.
Usted puede también votar en persona con anticipación desde el 22 de agosto hasta el 28 y para las elecciones primarias, y en octubre también tendrá 10 días para votar antes de las elecciones generales.
You can also vote in person on election days between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m.
También puede votar, usted también puede votar en persona de 7 de la mañana a 8 de la noche en el día de las elecciones 1 de septiembre o 3 de noviembre.
The primary is on September 1st and the general election is on November 3rd.
La primaria es el 1 de septiembre y la elección general el 3.
Double check where your polling location is this year. With the current COVID-19 pandemic, many polling locations have changed.
pueden por favor verificar su lugar de votación, ya que con la pandemia han cambiado varios sitios.
Because of these changes, you can check where to vote at www.revere.org.
Por estos cambios puede chequear dónde votar en www.revere.org.
That is all. Thank you.
Eso es todo, gracias. So just a quick interlude here, Madam Chair. We have Amanda Fraga, Heather's iPhone, and then 781-727-1542. Does anyone recognize these numbers? Anybody? And then we have two candidates still on deck here.
I believe Amanda is here to just participate, and I don't know who the phone number belongs to.
Okay. Unfortunately, let me just let them know. Give me 1 second. Seven, 727. It might be Lou. Is it Lou? Did we lose Lou? No, Lou's still here. Okay. All right, that's fine. And do we know who Heather is?
I'm 17971.
All right, got you, Lou. Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna keep going. Thank you, Shema, for the presentation. Again, the Democratic City Committee, we cannot stress enough how important it is to vote, and also how important it is to get to know your candidates before you vote. So you can learn more about the candidates who are running for state offices such as U.S. Senate, State Representative, Registrar, Probate, and Governor's Council tonight. And you can also come visit our page on Facebook, or you can also contact us at Revere, DEMS, reveredems@gmail.com if you would like to join the city committee. So now,
Hoy puede aprender sobre los candidatos que se están lanzando para las varias oficinas en las elecciones primarias y generales. También puede leer más puede aprender más sobre ellos hoy, que nos van a acompañar, y también nos pueden acompañar en la página del Facebook.
so now let's begin the candidates forum.
Entonces ahora vamos a comenzar el foro de candidatos.
Tonight's moderators are Jan Dumas and Patrick Keefe.
Los moderadores de hoy son Jan Dumas y Patrick Keefe.
Each candidate has 12 minutes to introduce themselves and respond to questions provided by the members of the Revere Democratic City Committee and pre-selected questions from the audience.
Cada candidato va a poder recibir preguntas de los miembros del Comité Demócrata de Revere y unas preguntas preseleccionadas por persona.
So now I'll turn it over to Jan to start us off.
Entonces ahora vamos a dejar que Jan nos comience.
Thanks, everybody. My name's Jan Dumas. I've been a resident of Revere for 16 years, and I live in the Shirley Avenue neighborhood.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Jan Dumas. Yo he vivido en el barrio de Shirley Avenue en Revere por más de 16 años.
Thank you. The first person I'm going to be asking questions of is a candidate for the Governor's Council, Terrence Kennedy. And Terrence, if you would take 2 minutes to introduce yourself to everyone before we start asking questions.
Yeah. So Terrence Kennedy is just now joining the call. So hello, Terrence Kennedy. Terrence Kennedy. Councilor Kennedy.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you
I'm sorry. I was actually in there for a little while. I think it's coming up under my wife's Zoom, unfortunately, because
now. Okay, that's okay.
using my computer, and that might have. Let me get the video on here.
Right.
All right. You think I know how to do all this stuff by now, since I do it every day in court?
Welcome.
Good. Thank you for having me. How's everybody doing tonight?
Right.
That's great. Why don't you just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Terry Kennedy. I am a practicing lawyer in the city of Everett. I grew up in Everett, and I've been practicing law in Everett for 37 years. I represent quite a few people from the city of Revere and have over the years, many, many families. My daughter lives on Rand Street in Revere. I have been a member of the Governor's Council for 9 years, and I am very proud of the work I've done there. I am very humbled that you folks have reelected me. It's a 2-year term, as you know, so this would be my 6th term as a 2-year term. I've put a lot of work into it, and I've really enjoyed it. I've always been available to anybody who wanted to talk to me about what the council does or any needs that they might have within, not just within the council, but with any other government issues that I can help them with. I have worked very hard at making sure we get some very qualified judges. I've worked very, very hard, and I'm pushing the Baker administration, as I did the Patrick administration, to do more pardons and commutations. One of the big issues I have, I thought Deval Patrick was a great governor, but one of the big issues I had with him was that he didn't do enough of those. He only did 3 pardons at the end of his term and 1 commutation. That was the only commutation in Massachusetts in 24 years. It was a very deserving individual. We can't act on them unless the governor puts them up. We can only vet those commutations and pardons and vote on them when a governor makes a recommendation. And governors in Massachusetts have been very hesitant to do that over the last 24 years. I think that the parole board, which sits as the governor's board of pardons, has just started hearing petitions for commutations to make recommendations to the governor that the governor could then put forward to us. So I'm hoping that Governor Baker doesn't wait to the end of this term. I'm certainly putting pressure on him as best I can using the bully pulpit to try to move on those a lot faster.
Mr. Kennedy, if you could just pause for a minute, and we're going to let Juan translate as much of that as he can, and
Sure,
then I'm going to start asking you questions, okay?
Oh, absolutely.
That's all right.
All right, so mi nombre es Terrence Kennedy, yo soy el candidato para la reelección para el consejero del gobernador. Yo soy abogado y he servido mucho a las comunidades de Revere por mucho tiempo ya. Entonces yo me estoy lanzando, he podido colaborar a muchas de las personas de nuestra comunidad ya, especialmente he trabajado con el gobernador Charlie Baker para asegurarnos de que tengamos las conmutaciones de que podamos salir de varios cargos de personas que han cometido de pronto errores no violentos, etcétera. Y estamos trabajando también para asegurarnos de que hayan jueces buenos para nuestro estado.
Okay. I'm not going to belabor that. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. I've worked very hard at this job, and I certainly am asking for everybody's support going forward.
Yo estoy trabajando muy fuertemente y no voy a hablar mucho más. Obviamente me gustaría tener el apoyo de todos ustedes.
Thanks. Our first question tonight is how can the Governor's Council be more transparent?
La primera pregunta que tenemos es cómo cómo la consejería del gobernador puede ser más transparente.
Sure. The Governor's Council is actually the most transparent part of the whole process of selecting judicial nominees. It starts with the Judicial Nominating Commission, which is completely done in secret by way of executive order.
La consejería del gobernador es uno de los procesos más transparentes. Comienzan con, obviamente, la postulación del gobernador de los ciertos candidatos.
When a nominee is recommended by the Judicial Nominating Committee, it then goes to a meeting with the governor's legal counsel and deputy legal counsel. The nominee would meet with them. And then it would go to what's called the Joint Bar, a group of bar associations. All of that's done out of the public view.
Después todo está Después llevan y repasan los nombres y se le preguntan a otros, se le preguntan a otros abogados, al comité de a un comité de abogados, a un buffet de abogados, y después entonces todo esto se hace por fuera del ojo del público.
The governor would then make a nomination if the person got through that process. It would then come to us. What we do is all in public.
Entonces el gobernador ya haría su postulación oficial y nosotros recibiríamos la postulación de su candidato y nosotros entonces ya miramos y observamos el candidato y todo este proceso ya es todo público.
We have a web page where we publish all the hearings and assemblies.
Tenemos una página web donde ponemos toda la información de todas las audiencias públicas que tenemos y todas las asambleas públicas.
They're published in various newspapers.
Entonces también utilizamos los periódicos.
And our meetings are open to the public.
Y las reuniones están abiertas al público.
Now, what has happened since COVID has come around is we have closed our meetings to the public coming in because of the risk of transmission. However, we will now live stream them on YouTube.
Ahora, lo que está sucediendo desde que comenzó el COVID, and I think if you want to wrap it up, you have about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Lo que está sucediendo por lo del COVID-19, todo se está haciendo por internet. Las reuniones se hacen por internet y las estamos pasando por el YouTube.
I would continue to do that even when we reopen fully, when we get through this COVID crisis. I would want it to continue to be on YouTube. I think that's the biggest thing we can do for transparency.
Y yo creo que la idea de mantener a las reuniones en YouTube después de que abramos todo y estemos ya otra vez comenzando sería buena para poder asegurar la transparencia.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. This second question is a little bit longer. So the Governor's Council approved a lifetime 6-digit salary court appointment for a politically connected candidate in March 2020 in a private meeting, prompting an accusation that it was unprecedented. Do you feel it was a violation of public trust, and can you elaborate on your answer? Thank you.
Number one, that meeting was not done in private. That was public as well, but it was done on the telephone. We don't decide when we meet and how we meet according to the Constitution. The governor decides that. We don't have a say over that. What was different about that particular nominee, and two others, by the way, not just that one, was that, and I'll address that nominee in a second, but we were right at the beginning of the COVID crisis. It was right at the beginning of March when everything was shutting down, and we had some unfinished business. Now, as we sit here in the middle of August, we've kind of figured out how to do things we didn't have before, such as Zoom, as we're doing right now. I didn't know what Zoom was when this started. I didn't know what WebEx was. We now do all of what work we are doing. We're back to work very slowly. We're doing a lot of it on WebEx, which is similar to Zoom, which is the government has contracts with. That wasn't available to us at the time. And Councilor Duff, I believe, had the hearing you're referring to. And she made the decision, and it was her decision, to not have a full hearing because we were afraid. She was afraid of infecting everybody with COVID. It was right at the beginning of it. So what we did instead was we had meetings that were private with the nominees. We discussed it. We did our vetting with the nominees, and the governor chose to hold the assembly in the manner in which he did, which under the Constitution he can do. We don't have a choice. Our choice would be not to show up and vote and not do our duty. But that was the circumstances surrounding that. Do I support that going into the future? Absolutely not. It was an unusual circumstances. We voted, I believe it was 2 juvenile court judges and 1 clerk magistrate through that system, finishing up the work we did before we completely shut down for a while. We had a number of meetings that we had to have during that period, not dealing with judicial nominees, but dealing with financial issues that if we didn't meet, there wouldn't have been funds available for police, fire, hospitals, etc. We had to have, and we had some conditional telephone meetings doing those. We then transferred over, as the governor's office set it up, with this WebEx system, which is much more open. We're still limiting people coming in for obvious reasons, but we are open to the public and electronically.
Okay, great. Let's just take a second so that we can let Juan translate as much of that as he can for our listeners.
Thank you, Jen. And actually, I think because we're running really behind on time, I think we're going to limit translation to candidate statements at the beginning, and then the questions, unfortunately, because we don't. I
apologize. I should have went slower. I should know because I do it in court sometimes.
That's okay. In that case, I'll jump to my next question, which is, how can you help build diversity in your position on the council?
Not only how can I have over the last 9 years, I've been a very strong advocate for a diverse judiciary. I voted on the first and chaired the hearing for the first Asian American woman on the Supreme Judicial Court. I voted for 2 African American women on the Supreme Judicial Court, one of which did not want to apply. That was Kimberly Budd. I went into her office and I talked her into applying. I have a very nice note in my desk from her thanking me for doing that. She was very hesitant. If she did not apply, there would not be a single African American on the Supreme Judicial Court. And she's an outstanding justice. I voted for the first member of the LBGT community, Barbara Lenk, who is now retiring. That was very controversial at the time. We were actually getting hate mail at my house. My son, who was 16 at the time, wanted to answer them all and tell them all where to go. I let him write the letters, but I didn't let him mail them because you don't know what kind of nut would come to your house. I voted on the second member of the LBGT community on the Supreme Judicial Court, and that wasn't a big deal. And in the 7 years in between, it became not a big deal, and that made me very happy. That's Ellie Seifert. She's very qualified. And you can go right down the ladder with different people that I have supported and encouraged to apply all the way down to the district court. I really believe in a diverse bench. I work with all of those lawyers, and there's some outstanding lawyers that would make diversity candidates who would make great judges. I have also committed to only voting for a diversity candidate, and I've done it publicly, and I've told the governor, and they've reopened the process for that Supreme Judicial Court nominee, because I think we need a black man in that position. There's no African American voice on the Supreme Judicial Court, and there wasn't a candidate available in the pool that they did when they completed the process. As a result of pressure from me, some bar associations, they reopened that process to seek out a diverse candidate. I think that's very important.
Okay. My timekeeper is letting me know that we're running a little late. So I have one last question for you, and I do hope that you are able to keep your next answer under 2 minutes so we can get everyone in tonight.
I'm a lawyer. We talk too much.
Huh?
I'm a lawyer. We talk too much.
So do you believe the selection and appointment of court magistrates and assistant court magistrates are a fair process, or is it far too political? Sure. What reforms, if any, would you propose to reform the appointment process?
Okay. The Governor's Council has nothing to do with the appointment of assistant clerk magistrates. That's done by the clerk magistrate under rules that are set up by the trial court. When somebody is nominated to be a clerk magistrate, we vet them and we vote on them. Is the process for judges and clerks political? We'd be naive not to think so. Okay. When John Adams wrote the Constitution, he made it a political process. Could it be better? Absolutely. No question about it. And I think we all have to work to make that better and get a better process in place as to how those nominees get there. But when we're looking at the particular nominee as a member of the council, our job is to see if they qualify, not investigate how they got there. Although the less political it is, obviously, the better it is for everybody. And we're just picking the most qualified candidate. Did I answer your question? Come close?
Came close. Great. And if you could just give us a quick 2-minute closing statement.
Sure.
And thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me. I love doing this job. It's not a full-time job. It's a part-time job. It feels like a full-time job a lot of the time, especially when it gets really busy with a lot of nomination. I've always made myself accessible to anybody who is thinking of even applying for one of these positions. Anybody who calls me and says, I'm thinking about applying, being a judge or clerk, whatever, even if I don't know who they are, I sit down and talk to them. I sit down and explain the process. I try to ease their anxiety and demystify the process for them. I've made myself available not just to them, but to anybody else in the community, whether it's Revere, Everett, where I grew up, Lynn, Cambridge, Somerville, the whole district. It's a huge district. I appreciate all the support I've gotten, especially from the people in Revere. I think I've won Revere every single time, and usually by large margins, and I thank you for that. And I am asking for your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Keefe, and he's going to ask the next set of questions.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Welcome, Lena Fontes. I'm saying that correctly. I'm Patrick Keefe. I'm one of the Revere City Council President, and I'm also the Treasurer for the Revere Democratic Committee. We appreciate you for joining us tonight. We do have a few questions, and you'll be given an opportunity if you could introduce yourself, and then we will ask you the same questions we asked Councilor Kennedy.
Okay, absolutely. So hello, my name is Lena Fontes. I live in the city of Lynn, and my journey really started with my son, who's now 23. He has been incarcerated 3 times since the age 16. And I'm really a mom who was trying to get help for my son when he was at the height of a mental health crisis. There were really long waits. I could not afford at that time the private out-of-home placements, but in spite of how concerned I was. And so my son, as a result of a long lag in care, there was 6 to 9 months wait at that time, was involved in a situation that resulted in his first incarceration. I learned from that one incarceration opened the door to others, and that defining moment was at 18 when I myself found myself subjected to discriminatory language. And as my son was being sentenced to 2 years, he's handcuffed, he's shackled, he's being walked out of the courtroom. And the messaging in the courtroom that day, although it was not directly stated, it was subtly implied that because of my childhood adversity and the fact that I grew up in foster care, that this was somehow my fault. So I committed myself then that I was going to do something. Didn't know what until I found out about the Governor's Council. And my candidacy is really about bringing new voices to the council that reflect or better reflect the diversity of our state. And I'm not just talking about racial diversity, although never has a person of color occupied a seat on the council. I'm also talking about occupational backgrounds and lived experiences of council members that will trickle down into our judicial system. What I bring to the table is over 8 years of experience in mental health. I'm currently the program director of a mental health nonprofit, and my program serves individuals in would be deemed urban communities in Massachusetts, most profoundly impacted by aggressive policing, high crime rates, and lack of empathy on part of the criminal court.
Thank you, Ms. Fontes.
So,
Juan, would you be able to sum that up?
I can sum it up. So, mi viaje en el servicio, en mis aspiraciones al servicio público comenzó con la historia de mi hijo. Mi hijo ha estado encarcelado 3 veces, él ha tenido problemas, necesidades de salud y cuyos servicios no pudo acceder. Entonces estuvo encarcelado una vez, y yo vi ahí como una encarcelación se convirtió en varias encarcelaciones, ¿no? Yo misma he estado involucrada con la ley y pues he visto justamente el maltrato que nuestro sistema criminal o de justicia tiene con nuestras personas. Entonces mi viaje yo me prometí, no solo por mí misma, sino por mi hijo, a poder, a poder abogar por las personas necesitadas de nuestra comunidad que de pronto necesitan más recursos y menos encarcelación.
Thank you, Juan. Ms. Fontes, I'm gonna ask you just a few questions, the same questions that we asked Councilor Kennedy. And if you could keep your statements or your answers between 1 and 2 minutes, that would be excellent. The first question, how can the Governor's Council be more transparent?
The Governor's Council is the only body throughout the entire judicial nominating process not appointed by the governor, but elected by the people to represent the people. The fact that the Governor's Council is an elected office suggests to me that, like other elected offices, the councils have a responsibility to represent the needs and interests of their constituency first and foremost. In order to do so adequately, a governor's counselor must be in regular communication with key stakeholders in order to stay in tune with what the needs and challenges are to ensure that the right individuals are being appointed. Secondly, I believe that input provided from the community should be honored and weighed heavily. When advocates and experts show up to a governor's council hearing to speak out against, for instance, not appointing another individual with the law enforcement background on the parole board, the governor's council has an obligation, I believe, to listen to the voices of the constituency, and that should be central to their decision making.
Thank you, Ms. Fontes. Question number 2. The Governor's Council approved a lifetime 6-digit salary court appointment for a politically connected candidate in March of 2020 in a private meeting, allegedly private meeting, prompting an accusation that was unprecedented. Do you feel it was a violation of public trust, and can elaborate on your answer?
Well, this was actually, when I saw the questions for tonight, I was unaware of that particular situation. So obviously not being there, I would say in general, yes, I do believe it's a violation of public trust. I think we all are very well familiar with the statistics on who's being incarcerated, the disparities in the communities that are being impacted. And so anytime something's done that's going to impact the community in that way, and it's not done, and the community's not taken into consideration, it just like deepens that distrust between community and our criminal justice system.
Thank you for your response. Question number 3. How can you help build diversity in your position on the council?
Well, I think overall there is a real lack of awareness of the Governor's Council, and I believe it's to our own detriment. I believe that appointing judges from diverse cultures and backgrounds should and must be the priority of the Governor's Council. To achieve that, my plan is to approach the nominating process in a different way. The current process really focuses solely on the qualifications and experiences of the nominee and does not take into consideration the constituency or the needs of the community they'd be serving in. A full understanding of the racial and socioeconomic composition of the constituency, I think coupled with the knowledge and needs of that community, will be front and center in my decision making. On this journey, I have spoken to many attorneys from various cultural backgrounds who have all told me that the pathway to nomination is very narrow and the process has been described as classes. Candidates are being asked questions unrelated to the office, such as debt and property liens, nothing to do with their role in the justice system. This type of scrutiny leaves out many diverse candidates, and as the only elected office not appointed by the governor, I think there's a real unique opportunity there to widen that path, to allow more candidates of color to make it through simply by refusing to vote for non-diverse candidates in communities specifically where it's been determined that a minority candidate would be more appropriate.
Thank you. Great answer. And the last question. Do you believe the selection of and appointment of a court magistrate and assistant court magistrates are a fair process, or is it far too political? What reforms, if any, would you propose to reform the appointment process? And I know you've kind of answered these questions along the way, but if you'd like to answer that.
So clerk magistrates go through a very similar vetting and screening process as justice candidates. So I think in the same way that you would scrutinize judges, like I would approach clerk magistrates. However, I just want to point out that clerk magistrates have significantly more power than people realize and are deemed first responders to crime, meaning they determine whether or not there was probable cause to charge someone with the crime. They set bails for individuals being held at police stations. They review search warrants and have the power to hold what's called a show cause hearing, which, if a resolution can be made in those hearings, the incident never gets recorded and it never appears on a person's query. Now, as exciting as that sounds, and as me as a mother, that would have been great for my son, these hearings are not used as tools for diversion, but as a means to protect political figures, the rich and the powerful. And the Boston Globe has done several pieces on this, and I'll actually share a link to one of their articles in the chat. So in that regard, yeah, they have power and really should be scrutinized the same way, again, prioritizing diversity, implicit bias, et cetera.
Thank you. And your closing statements.
My closing statements are what recent events have shown us is that now more than ever, reform is necessary at every layer of our justice system. Incarceration has quadrupled in less than 50 years right here in Massachusetts. We have 374 district court seats, and only 40 of those are held by minority justices. There's only 2 African-American clerks in the entire state of Massachusetts. Half of those incarcerated have not even been convicted of anything. They're there because of unreasonably high bails that were set. Our state incarcerates more than twice as many people per capita as the UK and 3 times that France. People of color are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than whites. This is not because they're committing 5 times more the crimes. It's because the judges in our courtrooms are not representative of us, nor do they understand the needs and the challenges of our communities. What the statistics are ultimately saying is that diversity, greater diversity alone isn't enough. Calling on the governor isn't enough. I think it's time to take bold action that includes adding implicit bias screening to the examination process, widening the pathway so that more judicial candidates of color have equal opportunities, and by putting the needs of the communities first and foremost in the voting process. If elected, I will do this work and more, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for being part of our presentation today. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Dimple?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Shema real quick.
I would like to thank all the candidates for the Governor's Council for their presentations. Before I move on to the next candidates, I just want to spend a couple of minutes just to talk to you guys about the 2020 census and why it is important for each and every one of us to be counted. So the next, in shorter terms, the census is a national count used to determine critical decisions like political representation and what public and private resources go to the communities, especially low-income communities. When a community is undercounted by the census, it results in political inequality and less funding for those communities, especially low-income communities. The communities who are historically undercounted are often communities who experience barriers to accessing other resources. And, you know, Revere is a historically undercounted community, so we would like to change that if everyone would go ahead and fill out the census. You could fill out the 2020 census today online at my2020census.gov or by phone at 844-330-2020. And now we would like to return to the forum with presentations by the Registrar of Probate candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Shema.
Hey, everybody. And yes, please fill out your census. Next, we're going to speak to a gentleman who is a candidate for Registrar of Probate, Mr. Kirby Robertson, and I hope I pronounced that right. If you could just take 2 minutes to introduce yourself to everyone, we'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. You pronounce it perfectly. So I appreciate that. And thank you to the Revere Democratic City Committee for the invitation, because during this pandemic time, it's very difficult to meet with the residents and the voters. So it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And I ask you to support my candidacy. Now, again, the name is Kirby Robertson. I am married with 3 boys. I have a 20, 16, and a 12-year-old boy. I don't have girls. So if you would go to my website, kirbyforprobate.com, you'll find more information. But at the same time, it might be very helpful that I talk a little bit more about my professional life. I have been a lawyer practicing probate court for nearly 27 years. And during that time, I was a public defender in both criminal and civil cases involving care and protection. My first job was working for the Department of Social Services as an assistant regional counsel, dealing with kids that are abused and neglected in the Suffolk County. So I'm very familiar with the probate court. I've been practicing there ever since. So 27 years of practice. I know the probate court. I know the judges. I know it. And I know what the registry can be. That is the reason why I'm running. I think that right now, the Registry of Probate has been a dormant entity, an office that sits there to try to serve the community. I know that I can.
Let's get a second. Let's let Juan translate as much of that as he can, and then we'll start with the questions.
Thank you.
So, mi nombre es Kirby Robertson. Yo me estoy lanzando para registrador del condado de Suffolk, de la Corte de Familias. Yo he practicado ya la ley, el derecho en esta corte por muchos años. Yo soy padre de familia. Entonces yo me estoy lanzando y espero que puedan apoyarme. Pueden visitarme a mi página de web, kirbyrobinson.com, para ver, para saber más sobre mi candidatura. Go ahead, Kirby. Sorry about that.
That's great.
Okay. So our first question for you tonight is, what will be your major goal if elected?
Yes. If elected, besides bringing effective and professional management at the registry to deliver prompt and competent services to the registry and the members of the bar, I want to provide free legal representation to folks in custody, child support, and parenting times. Parenting times for grandfathers and grandmothers are very important to strengthen the family. So that I will work with the law schools in the area to provide legal representation to people who cannot afford a lawyer in those small cases. They sound small, but they are very important for the foundation of the family, which is actually what we need in this hard time we call the pandemic time.
Okay. So our second question for you, and one that's important to me, is how will you focus on increasing education surrounding elder abuse and domestic violence?
Yes, and that's a great question, and thank you. And I will say it is important to me too. I was raised by a grandmother. My mother passed away when I was 6 months old. My grandmother died at 106. I know what it is to live with somebody in that age. So it is very close to my heart. I believe, and because I am in communities that are immigrants, it is very important to bring attention to the problem, elder abuse, promote and heighten the elder abuse situation, and provide community services in terms of outreach, and go to the homes and explain what elder abuse is. Look for the sign. There are overt signs and there are covert or subtle signs. When you see bruises, that's overt. When you see people that are going to the corner and not speaking to people, that are subtle. So you need to be great.
Mr. Registrar, how are you? This is one
Sorry.
from the Revere Democratic City. So I know you're on. I know you're
okay.
in the waiting room,
our next question.
You're on the Zoom account, right? What does it say your name on Zoom is? Does it say Charu owner or?
Are you speaking with me?
No, he just muted himself. He was okay. So our third question for you is: what other initiatives would you implement if elected, and why?
Okay. Other initiatives include, and there are several. It's to transform mandatory training for all employees. Mandatory training in disability awareness. Okay. And languages, cultural differences. So employees in the office can be trained to receive and serve people effectively. So that is very important to me. I speak French, Haitian Creole, and Spanish. I believe my father was somebody disabled, and this is something that is close to me too. The service needs to be as professional as it can be. So mandatory training to anybody who works in the registry will be an initiative that I will push.
That sounds wonderful. And our final question for you today is: how will you use technology to make doing business with the Registrar's office more convenient to the general public and the attorneys who work with the court? And remember, 2 minutes.
Yes. The probate court right now, they have an electronic system. They have computers that are not really working properly. Sometimes you can't. I will bring technology, relevant technology now, so people can file their papers from home. They can review the cases from home. They can contact the court and find out what the status of their case is. That's what needs to be done. And it's happening everywhere. Every state that is looking at serving the public effectively. So I will make the computer work. I will make the electronic filing a reality.
That's great. And if you could just give us your closing statement, please. And thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure. And I've been meeting a lot of folks in Revere, and I'm grateful for their friendship, and I'm asking them to support this candidacy for the probate court. The probate court has been dormant. We want to change it. We want to make it a dynamic, a truly in serving the communities that it serves at this point. So the probate court can be changed and serve the community. I'm ready for it. 27 years of probate practice. And owner of a small law firm, I know how to work with folks. I know the probate court. You need to be a lawyer to effectively serve. The last few years, we've had suspension of 2 probate registers. Not that they are not good people. They are just not lawyers. They are politicians. I happen to be a lawyer who can provide the services necessary for Revere and Suffolk County in general. And I have the elderly folks in mind. I will be working at every home to make sure that the probate court is relevant in their lives. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
But thank you so much. And I am now going to turn it over to Patrick Keefe, and so he can interview our next person. And thank you again for coming.
Mr. Treasurer, if you could just bear with me 1 second. I'm still working with the Register of Probate, Arroyo.
Sure.
get him in the room. We're having some technical difficulties with him. Let me give him
Okay. Do you think it would be good to go to the next two candidates instead?
We could. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me just give me 2 seconds here.
We'll give you a minute or two, or 30 seconds. So next up, just so everyone's aware, after we do the Registrar of Probate, the next two interviews will be in front of us for the state representative race between Joe Gravalisi and Councilor Jessica Giannino. And I know that I see both of them here, so that'll be good. And then for everyone watching on Revere TV and on Zoom, we are following that up by the United States Senate race. We have both Senator Ed Markey and Congressman Joe Kennedy joining us. And I have to say, I'm very excited at the level of participation we've gotten with the Revere Democratic Committee tonight to have that many great candidates join us. And we'll be supporting all those candidates.
Okay, he should be jumping on any second now. Thanks for everyone indulging me on this one. Should be jumping on now. Where is he? I'll wait another 30 seconds, and if not, hold on 1 second. Back.
This won't lend well for his technology question. I'm here for comic relief tonight, all night long.
Hi, no, I don't see you in. The meeting has already begun. Okay. Just bear me. Don't hang up, okay?
While we have a short break, we have just wanted to mention to all the candidates, but also all the followers out there, the Revere Democratic Committee is a nonprofit organization, and we do seek donations, campaign contributions to the Democratic Committee. So if anyone's interested, you can look us up.
Yes, I don't know what's happening.
Contribute to the Revere Democratic Committee. As the treasurer, you can send donations to 44 Kilburn Street, CO Patrick Keefe, or to any of the members, and we'll make sure that it gets put towards the committee. We're also opening up an Act Blue account this week. You can do it online. One.
All right. So now we have the Registrar of Probate with us. So
I can hear you.
Camera, but he is here, and we'll open it up for him. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Registrar.
Sorry, wait over here. Arroyo. Hi, Mr. Arroyo. Yes. You there? How are you, sir? We welcome you to our committee meeting tonight, and we're cutting into a little bit of time, so I'm going to ask a few questions. If you can first introduce yourself, 1 to 2 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you about 4 questions. You'll have about a minute per question, and then you can have a closing statement. So, Mr. Arroyo, would you like to introduce yourself?
I cannot see you, though. But
it's okay.
Yes. Okay. I hope you can see me. All right. Just a moment. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
All right, yes. My name is Felix Arroyo, and I'm a proud resident of Revere, and I'm running for re-election as your Registrar of Probate and Family Court. I have a long history of public service and for fighting for my values and justice and equity. In every role that I have held, whether it has been a community organizer, or a first Latino elected in the Boston City Council, or the first person of color ever elected as Registrar of Probate in Massachusetts, I've always been led by my values. As your Registrar of Probate, I took on the monumental task of ensuring that the registry reflects the diversity of Suffolk County. On my first day in office, the registry staff of 35 was about 20% people of color and can only speak with registry using English. Now the registry is 65% people of color, speak English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, and Vietnamese. At the registry, we have made tremendous strides in reforming an office to one that is reflective of the community served and is user-friendly and efficient. I'm asking for your support and for your vote in Tuesday, September 1st, so that I can continue my life work for fighting for justice and equity for all people and continue the reforms we have put in place in the registry. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a few questions that I'd like to ask. And if you could keep your answers brief. What would be your major goal if re-elected?
If elected as your Registrar of Probate, my major goal will be to keep moving the office forward with a focus of accessibility and efficiency. Prior to my election, the registry only spoke English. Now the registry staff speak English, Spanish, Haitian, Vietnamese, Creole, and Cape Verdean. Additionally, we have implemented a translation line, which if you happen to speak a language that we do not speak, you will be able to do the translation and to ensure that you understand and you serve. We have an average of 15,000 cases a year still at the registry. Most of those cases are filed by people that cannot afford a lawyer. I knew that those who cannot afford a lawyer would benefit greatly by having access to free legal advice. However, clerical court rules prohibit the Registrar of Probate and the staff to give legal advice. So we solved this obstacle by implementing a Lawyer of the Day program, where a private family law lawyer is available at the registry to provide free legal service for the registry users. Everything I have done at the registry, whatever is ensuring the staff reflect the diversity of Suffolk County, exponentially increasing language access to the registry and providing access to free legal advice to register users that are done because I sincerely believe that registry should work, or not just work for some of the residents, but for of the residents of Suffolk County. The vote to re-elect me is a vote to continue making the strides that we have done and to continue making the registry work for all of the residents of the Suffolk County.
Thank you, Mr. Arroyo. And the next few questions, if you can try to keep your answers a little brief as we're running up on time. How will you focus on increasing education surrounding elder abuse and domestic violence?
We have a program of reaching out to community agencies, to elderly centers, to family community centers, and we will continue that as soon as the time to need us to do so. Otherwise, we are open to do it by Zoom to any group that wants to talk about the process that we use in order to benefit those who feel they are abused from domestic or elder abuse. We process their cases immediately at the office, and we have assigned a person daily to do that, 2 people and a supervisor. And we have trained all the staff in dealing with domestic abuse and elderly abuse.
Thank you. And the third question, what other initiatives would you implement if re-elected?
Any new initiative that I implement will have its focus increasing access to the registry and serving of all the users of the registry with the respect of dignity that they deserve. That is why we implement the Lawyers of the Day program that provides free legal advice to register users and utilize the Court Community Service Center to help our process clients. Those are the clients that have no lawyer, and which is 90% of our clients, fill the required paperwork for their cases. We believe that the registry that reflects all of the residents of Suffolk County is the best able to serve the Suffolk County. That is why we have hired staff that is 65% people of color, and speak different languages, as I mentioned before. Now that we have been able to transform and reform the registry, my goal is to expand in our community initiative. We currently do outreach in schools, senior centers, and community events. Moving forward, I want to do more. I want our residents of Suffolk County to know that the registry is there for them. I want them to know that what they senior and served by the registry. If elected, I will be able to continue moving the registry operation forward. And the only elected officers that have in the world my telephone number so that people can reach me whenever they want. So when they come to the registry, they will see a big sign with my name and the phone. So they can call me when they need. And if they feel that they have not been served adequately, we'll do the investigation and take care of it.
Thank you. So the last question is, what have you used? How have you used technology to make doing business with the registrar's office more convenient to the general public and the attorneys who work with the court?
At the registry, we now hold what we call Suffolk questions. It's an email. I can give you the email number later on, but Suffolk questions is an email that allows people to send us a question that they have, and we have qualified employees answering that constantly, so that the people receive the information that they need. We cannot do legal advice, but we can do process, and we can tell people what the paperwork is needed and how they have to fill it. What they put in it is the process of the law, and that has to be done by a lawyer or the lawyer of the day to the community service center, which we use constantly with our process. I'm proud of having implemented virtual appointment available working days from 8:30 to 4. And that implementation certainly came handy right now during COVID-19. And not only is more convenient for some to have virtual appointments due to the pandemic, it is necessary. These virtual appointments are done through Zoom. However, we must be aware that the vast majority of the registered users are low income. The technology divide is real. Many things that are not convenient for some due to technology are out of reach for those that cannot afford the technology. That's why we have focused on increasing access to the registry, both virtually and in person, respecting the social distance and the mask. We see people daily escorted by the security guards so that we can have a distance for the employees and for them. But we have full care. We attend people daily, every day.
Thank you. And in your closing statements, if you would feel free to speak in either English or Spanish, it's up to you, and then we can have Juan translate.
Thank you. I can do it in English, or at least in broken English. I ask for your vote in Tuesday, September 1st. Thank you. I ask for your vote in Tuesday, September 1st. If we elected, I will continue to ensure that the registered staff reflect the community it serves, prioritize customer service and efficiency and values each and every person that walks through the doors. The registry handles over 15,000 cases a year, and the vast majority of those cases are filed by people that cannot afford a lawyer. This is why we implement the Lawyer of the Day program, and we have instituted translation lines so that if you happen to speak a language that we do not speak, you can use the translation line to ensure that we serve you adequately and understand you. But the registry will lead with values and justice and equity. And the administrative, as the administrative arm of the family court, it is essential that we respect and honor all families. In this race, I am the only candidate that can say that I have always done that. Many of you know that I have always been a champion of LGBTQ rights and of civil rights. My opponent cannot say that. In fact, in 2005, when he was a candidate for state representative, he ran on an anti-gay marriage platform. He was quoted in the Globe in January 20, 2005, saying, and I am quoting, I am not going to advocate for gay marriage. To me, the word marriage, I don't equate to civil rights. Those are his words, not mine. Like my opponent, I have always supported gay marriage, and I am proud of my record fighting for the rights of all people. If they want to adopt, we will allow the process. So I would like to have your vote, and if you need more information, please go to votefelix.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. So that wraps up
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Welcome. That wraps up the Registrar of Probate, and we're going to go right into the state representative race. First up is Joseph Gravalisi. This is for the 16th Suffolk District. Each candidate will have approximately 12 minutes. We are, not to put the pressure on either of you, we're running about 5 minutes behind, so we're making up good time. Thank you very much. Mr. Gravalisi, if you can introduce yourself, and you have approximately 2 minutes. We're going to ask you a number of questions. If you can keep your answers brief, between 1 and 2 minutes, we really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Mr. Gravalisi.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Gravalisi, and I'm running for state representative because we deserve better from our state government, and we need bold ideas to tackle the serious challenges that our state faces.
Joe,
What?
sorry, I'm going to do the translation. Just for the intro, the questions will be you're all in English. Mi nombre es Joe Gravalisi, yo me estoy lanzando para el distrito 16 del condado de Suffolk y estoy buscando el apoyo de todos ustedes hoy.
We need to do better to make sure that every kid in Massachusetts, regardless of whether they're born in Wellesley or Belmont or Chelsea or Revere, has access to a great education. That means making sure that all kids can go to preschool. It means eliminating the 2,000 plus student waiting list to get into vocational and technical schools. And it means that making sure education is focused on developing the whole child, not just what's on a standardized test.
Yo me aseguraré de que cada estudiante de nuestro estado tenga acceso a una educación equitativa y de calidad. Eso quiere decir asegurarnos de que todo niño o niña tenga acceso a estudio preescolar. También para asegurarnos de que eliminemos la lista de espera para las escuelas vocacionales, entre otras cosas.
We need to do better to protect collective bargaining rights and to create union jobs, to crack down on wage theft and unfair labor practices, and increase access to training programs that get people into the building trades.
Nosotros tenemos que asegurarnos de que los trabajadores, los derechos de los trabajadores sean respetados, asegurarnos de que estemos peleando contra el robo de salario que sucede muchas veces y asegurarnos de que las personas tengan acceso a trabajar en las varias industrias que hay.
We need to do better to protect the environment by committing to 100% clean renewable energy and protecting the air we breathe and the water we drink. We need to do better to improve our inadequate public transportation system. And we need to do better to make sure that people of all ages, from seniors on fixed incomes to people of my generation just starting out to returning veterans, don't get priced out of Greater Boston by addressing the soaring cost of housing.
Nosotros tenemos que asegurarnos de que estemos cuidando de todas nuestras generaciones, incluyendo entre las más jóvenes hasta los más veteranos, y asegurarnos de que todo el mundo tenga acceso a viviendas asequibles, que no sean echados de Boston porque les es muy caro el alquiler.
And we need to do better to make sure that communities of color and immigrant communities feel welcomed, respected, and included in our civic life.
Y además tenemos que asegurarnos de que las comunidades de color y las comunidades inmigrantes se sientan respetadas e incluidas en nuestra vida cívica.
We are in the midst of a crisis that is exposing problems that have existed for a long time, especially in cities like Revere. So many of our neighbors were one damaging event away from being unemployed, from having to wait in line at the food bank to be able to feed their families, from seeing their savings and their dreams of sending their kids to college or buying a house dashed. So we need to build a future in places like Revere, where a working family can provide a fair shot for their kids through housing, healthcare, education, and good jobs. I think we've fallen short in doing this in Massachusetts, and I'm running to be a part of the solution. Thank you.
Tenemos que asegurarnos de que estemos trabajando para todas nuestras comunidades y yo creo que hemos tenido fallas en eso y por eso es que yo me estoy lanzando para ser su representante estatal de Massachusetts. Gracias.
Thank you. Mr. Gravalisi, we have a few questions based on two of the following subject matters: immigration, housing, transportation, and environmental justice, economic mobility, and police reform.
Okay.
Police reform. Police in our urban communities like Revere are becoming increasingly militarized in their operations and appearance. For example, officers are routinely seen wearing tactical gear while on routine patrol and driving in black or unmarked vehicles. These examples are seen far less, if at all, in suburban communities with a far smaller proportion of minority citizens. Do these tactical build or erode trust between law enforcement and the citizenry of communities like Revere? And how do these realities fit into the larger initiative of 21st century community policing that cities like Revere are working to implement?
Yeah, so thank you for asking this question, because I think, the way we've approached this issue in Revere provides an opportunity to really push back on the narrative that's out there, that if you're in favor of reforms to policing, that means that you're anti-police. Because we know that that's just not true, because we've seen here in our community the value of having leadership that really gets that it makes our community safer to not have an overly militarized face to law enforcement. So many of you know I used to work in Mayor Arrigo's office, and when I worked in his office in 2016, long before the current protest movement was in the news, we worked with the Revere Police Department to take the military vehicles that had been parked out in the parking lot as like the public face of the department, to take them out of that parking lot, to make a different public face for the department. We wanted to de-emphasize those kinds of tactics. We created more foot patrols, community substations to create a more friendly sort of community-facing approach for the police, and put in place training methods and programs connecting police and the community to focus on building that strong, trusting relationship. And look, we're far from perfect. We always have a lot more work to do, but I think we've seen the positive results from this kind of approach, because I think if you ask around in the community, trust is up. And I think that's thanks to the fact that leaders in Revere and then also in Chelsea, have really bought into the need to build that 21st century community policing.
Thank you. And on transportation, what initiatives will you make to reduce the traffic congestion in Revere and neighboring communities?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I guess it was the question before COVID. I think now we're in this traffic lull because of COVID, but we'll get back there. And so I think the most important thing that we need to do to reduce congestion in Revere and surrounding communities, because we are so close into Boston, is to make sure the state's investing in real fixes to our public transportation system. Right now, on an average pre-COVID morning, nearly half of the cars parked at the Wonderland station on a given morning are from Lynn, and even more are from points north of Lynn. And I think we could reduce some of that traffic on our roads to Revere if we took our current broken commuter rail system, which only runs a couple times a day, is really unreliable and is too expensive, and transformed it into a true regional rail system that runs every 30 minutes all day, and creates direct connections between communities up the North Shore into downtown Boston. If we did that, we could reduce some of the congestion through communities like Revere and Chelsea. We could increase access to jobs and transportation and housing. And this is very doable because it's not building out any new infrastructure. It's using tracks that we already have and using them better. And there's already plans in place for what this could look like if we really fight for it. We also need to connect the blue and the red lines on the tape. This was actually promised to us back in the 90s as part of the Big Dig, but it fell by the wayside. We never got what was promised to us. Somerville finally just got what was promised to them with the Green Line extension. We're still waiting. A blue and red connection would provide direct MBTA access for Revere residents to jobs along the Red Line from Cambridge to the seaport. We also need better bus service, bus lanes and smarter routes to deal with the overcrowding that happens and delays for routes that a lot of people in Revere and Chelsea take, like the 111, the 116, and the 117. And then we need to invest in our roads. The Suffolk Downs project is slated to include $50 million in traffic improvements to address traffic congestion along 1A, 16, Route 1. We need to fight to make sure that that money comes through and that we continue to do engineering studies to do these kinds of upgrades and improvements.
Thank you. And Dimple, thank you for keeping time. Mr. Gravalisi, question number 3. Housing. The COVID-19 crisis has only exacerbated the housing insecurity issues that were prevalent before this pandemic, when there was broad agreement that something needs to be done to address housing affordability and production. House and Senate Democrats have failed to roll out and advance their own housing plan, while also largely ignoring Governor Charlie Baker's frequent calls for his plan to make housing projects more likely to secure local approval. On evictions and foreclosures, Baker extended the moratorium 60 days beyond its expiration from August 18th to October 17th. Supporters still plan to push for this legislation that would keep the moratorium in place until 1 year after COVID-19 state of emergency ends. Will you support an extension of this moratorium?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So first of all, yes, we need to extend the eviction moratorium. We're in the middle of a health crisis, in a pandemic crisis right now, and we're also in the middle of an economic crisis. We really can't let a homelessness crisis stack up on top of that. So I absolutely support that. But I also appreciate you mentioning the governor's housing bill, because that bill would ease the path to making sure that we have a lot of communities, not even just all over the state, but really even on the MBTA corridor, that really aren't building any housing at all. I know we are building some housing in Revere. There are a lot of communities that aren't, and the governor's bill would help, make that happen a little bit more frequently in some of these communities, because the whole region needs to pick up the slack of addressing our affordable housing challenge. It can't all just fall on a few communities. One other thing I want to quickly mention in terms of housing, I know we're short on time, is in Chelsea, a certain percentage of new development is set aside for affordable housing, especially for vulnerable populations like seniors or veterans. We're long overdue to enact a similar policy here in Revere. I know that we don't have direct control over that as state rep, but I would certainly use my voice to advocate for that.
Thank you. Any closing statements?
Yeah, so thank you for taking the time to ask these questions and discuss important issues. That's what a campaign should be all about. So in closing, I'd just like to say that to make real change on the issues that we discussed tonight, we don't need to just have the right opinions. We also need to have plans in place to really change broken systems. Since I launched my campaign in March, every week I've been posting, detailed list of my priorities on my website and in local media, so that that I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one and work on what I've identified as priorities around education, transportation, senior citizen policies, and so much more. I am also the only candidate in my race to commit to the State House Transparency Pledge, which means that I'm committed to making all of my committee votes public. Massachusetts right now has one of the most secretive legislatures in the country, where important votes happen in committees behind closed doors without the results being made public. I've committed to fighting to change that. We need stronger ethics laws to make sure that powerful committee chairs don't take campaign contributions from industries that they're supposed to regulate. And we also need term limits on key leadership positions. We also need more legislators who commit to doing this job full time and committing themselves to the hard work of coalition building, advocacy, and constituent services, and not having this be a paycheck they collect while also working another job. And lastly, I would just say that I would bring to this seat nuts and bolts experience working at both the state level and the city level to get things done. At the state level, when I worked for Representative Lori Ehrlich as her legislative director, I helped write and push through a bill that holds National Grid and Eversource accountable for gas leaks, and another bill that protected working people from exploitative non-compete agreements. And when I worked here in Revere for Mayor Arrigo, I was part of the team that created the Substance Use Disorder Initiatives Office, which has helped reduce overdose deaths here, and also helped create the 311 Constituent Services System. So I hope you'll consider supporting me on September 1st, not only for what I believe in, but also because of my demonstrated commitment to acting on it. So thank you and have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Gravalisi. And we're going to turn it over to Jan Dumas, and she's going to interview Jessica Danino, Councilor Jessica Danino. Jan.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And hello, Jessica Danino. Everybody knows you pretty well, but why don't you take 2 minutes to introduce yourself to everyone here?
Well, hi, Jan, and hi, Neelix. I'm sure he's there with you. We miss seeing you guys at City Hall, but I want to first start by thanking the Democratic Committee for having us all here this evening. It's difficult campaigning during COVID, and this is a great opportunity and a platform for you to get to see your candidates. So thank you, and you guys are doing a great job. Many of you know me. My name is Jessica Danino, and I am a city councilor in the city of Revere. I have been a city councilor at large since 2012. During my time on the city council, I've had the pleasure of serving as city council president twice, as well as city council vice president. During that time, I've actually been working and serving the city of Revere. So I want to start by telling you about some of the things that I've actually accomplished. And
1 second, I'm just going to translate that first bit. Mi nombre es Jessica Danino. Primero me gustaría abrir por agradecerte a las personas del Comité Demócrata de Revere por el trabajo que están haciendo, por darnos la oportunidad de hablar con ustedes todos hoy. Yo me estoy lanzando también para ser representante estatal de Revere. Me gustaría comenzar con decir que, yo he sido la presidenta y la vicepresidenta del Consejo de Revere, en el cual actualmente estoy, y me gustaría hablarle un poquito de lo que he estado haciendo como concejal.
Thank you, Juan.
Yeah.
So during that time, I'm going to tell you about some of the things I've accomplished in the city of Revere, and then in the closing remarks, I'll tell you a little bit about what my future plans are. So it's really important that when you serve as an elected official, you make some difficult decisions, and you also get to make some decisions on some great ordinances and legislation that we pass. So while on the council, we've worked on the resident parking program. We've worked on collaborative ordinances on the resident vehicle parking to get commercial vehicles off the street and help alleviate our congestion. I was also part of a motion to ban plastic bags in the city of Revere, among many other things. I've had the opportunity to work on 8 budgets for the city. And once you work on a budget and vote on a budget, some of the difficult decisions and difficult cuts that you have to make. And I can tell you that through that experience, I've learned so much. And I look forward to bringing the experience and the proven track record that I have to the State House, and I would be honored to represent you and continue to work for the 16th Suffolk District.
Yo he trabajado en muchos proyectos de ley de aquí de Revere, entre ellos el proyecto de ley para el parqueadero residencial. También, obviamente, tengo experiencia presupuestual. Es bastante experiencia pues que me gustaría poder llevar para representarlos a todos ustedes a la Casa Estatal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for the
We're only doing
translation.
translation for intro, so no.
Okay. So our first question is on economic mobility. Massachusetts has made it illegal to ask prospective employees questions about their salary history. What do you think is the next step toward achieving gender pay equality?
Thank you, Jan. So that's a great question. And I will say, Massachusetts was the first state in the nation to pass legislation to close the gender pay gap and strengthen the workplace for women. Women are the primary earners in their households. Oftentimes, they're making the money in the homes, right? So in 50% of America, your women are bringing home the bread, but they're still making 80 cents to the dollars for men. So the pay equality law is an excellent first step to stop the practice of creating future workplace disparities. So it's really important that we use that as a first step so we can improve things moving forward. However, what it doesn't do is protect people that are already hired. So something that's really important to me is to make sure that we put into law something for the women that are already working, that are already in these positions, because those are the gaps that we need to fill. And as a female and as someone that's experienced this firsthand, it's something that I want to continue to work towards and fight until that gap's closed.
Oh, that's great. Our next question is about police reform. In efforts to ensure accountability and the equal administration of justice under the law, would you be in favor of ending qualified immunity for police who break the law while on duty and as a direct result cause harm to our citizens?
Thank you, Jan. So as many of you know, it's no secret, this is something that really hits close to home for me. My dad's a Revere police officer, and he loves the people of the city as much as they love him. And I'd like to think that all cops are just like my dad, but I know that that's not the case. So this calls, for reform for police officers that are not doing the right thing. And I think, it's really important that we address how people of color feel and how their perception is. And the biggest thing for me has always been education. I've always said at the root of every issue is education. So I think that we need to do a better job at educating our police officers in things like de-escalating situations, and also in issues such as mental health. I think a lot of these calls that end up escalating are due to mental health issues. And I think that if we do a better job at education, that will help. But, there's also this issue with longstanding protection for good cops because there are bad cops. And, that's just bad policy. So I think it's really important. The House has so far done a really good job of stopping qualified immunity for police officers that were fired. However, it still supports the principle of innocent until proven guilty. So I think that, there's this legislation, it's still in conference, it's still in committee. And, as they go through extended session, we'll have a better idea of how this happens and really be able to follow it a little bit more closely. But I really think that, right now, the biggest focus is to continue to move forward, to continue to listen to the concerns of our residents. And I will say I'm really proud to be from Revere, where we do have the police department we do in the relationships we do.
Thank you so much. My final question tonight is, if elected as state rep, would you step down from other offices or positions you currently hold?
So this is a really great question. I would currently resign from my full-time job. I've worked my entire life. I've had a job since I was 14 years old. So I am definitely committed to being a full-time state representative. I'm committed to leaving my full-time job and serving as a full-time legislator.
Okay, and you now have 2 minutes for a closing statement. And thank you again for coming today.
Great. Well, Jan, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity, as I mentioned earlier. Being a member of the Democratic Committee for a long time, this is the first time I've seen something like this. So to have this turnout of candidates and this participation is really quite remarkable. So congratulations to you guys. But I think it's important moving forward. So I talked to you about what I did. Now I want to talk to you about what I want to do. For many of you, you may know that the environment's one of my primary concerns. I've been an advocate against Wheelabrator Saugus, and I've protected, the residents of the Point of Pines and Riverside and East Saugus that are facing this constant environmental offender. So the environment's definitely important to me. I plan on continuing to keep their feet to the fire and hold them accountable. Last summer was completely unacceptable, and this summer is no different. There was a fire that was completely downplayed, and at the end of the day, our residents deserve better. So as a state representative, it's my goal to ensure that our residents get what they deserve. In terms of transportation, I think that a lot needs to be done. We have a crumbling infrastructure. We need to improve our roads, our bridges. We need to offer tax incentives. So if COVID continues, for companies to ensure people work from home and, give options to, it's been great being able to travel and not be in bumper to bumper traffic everywhere you go when you traverse the city of Boston. And also really take companies like Uber and Lyft and Waze that bring traffic into our communities that don't belong here and make them pay for it. I know there are some lofty goals in terms of what we want for the city, right? The city of Revere has been fighting for a tax break on the Tobin for our tolls for years. So that's a fight we'd want to continue. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you something that I've learned being an elected official is the most important thing you can do is listen and to be there for your constituents and to have an open door. And I'll tell you that that's something I'm committed to. It's something I've always been committed to. And I want to continue to listen, hear what's on your mind. And I look forward to September 1st. I hope that you support me, and I hope that you remind people to get out and vote because it's the most important thing. And if you haven't already, complete the census. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like
we go. Nope, there I am. Sorry. What I'm also wondering is also if you are going to be leaving the city council if you are elected.
So, Jan, that's a great question.
We're coming up on time. Jan, we're coming up on time for the next, and we don't just have a few minutes.
I know.
All right. There's no reason to go back. I think we've already answered the questions. If you want to. We're running behind.
Well, we have Congressman Kennedy up next, and I know he has a hard stop possibly. So let's, if we can just keep it going. Thank you, guys.
So thank you, Jan, and we're going to turn this over to welcome Congressman Kennedy. Welcome to the Revere Democratic Committee meeting. We appreciate you taking the time to do an interview with us. I know that we ran a little bit behind, so I apologize. And if you have to get off, jump off, please do so. But we do have a few questions. First, if you can introduce yourself, brief introduction, and let us know about Congressman Kennedy.
Great. Hey, thanks so much, guys. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I appreciate the chance to address you. I'll keep this quick so we can get through. I know you have some questions for me, and time is a little bit tight. I know we're a little bit behind, so I'll keep the opening comments short. But look, I got in this race because I believe that you deserve more from your U.S. Senator. And I think that if there's a connective thread between the election of Donald Trump to the devastation of COVID-19 to the stirring moment of racial justice, it's that we have a government that has become far too disconnected from its people. We've got a healthcare system where the sick can't afford care. We've got an economy where it makes it almost impossible to be middle class. We've got a justice system that devalues and steals Black and brown lives. And you got folks in Washington that think that that's going to be solved by some backroom deal. And it's not. It's going to be solved here in our communities, in our streets, from public servants that are out there fighting for it every single day. And the fact is that I don't think you can lead Massachusetts if you don't live here. And Senator Markey spends less than a week a month here. He spent less time in Massachusetts than Liz Warren did when she was running for president. He says that he needs to be in Washington. he missed over 50% of the votes since COVID-19 hit our Commonwealth. And those aren't just regular old votes. Those are votes that tried to shape the framework of COVID response, overhaul our economy and our healthcare system to try to make sure that people could survive through this pandemic. And when it comes to the big changes that he says that he wants to have come to pass, if that's the case, you got to be out there fighting for that change. And when we needed him as a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, when Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, I was in dozens of districts across the country trying to make sure we could flip the House, regain a lever of government, hold this administration accountable, and pass progressive change. And he literally went nowhere, not a single other place. So if you're not here, you're not fighting for us in Washington. You're not fighting for the change we need. I think our Commonwealth deserves more. And I promise you that if I have the chance to serve as your senator, you will get everything I can possibly give on every single day. Because I don't think at this time, at this moment, that families should expect anything less from their senator than what the same degree of fight and commitment that you're fighting for your families. Our senator should give that to you as well. So grateful for the opportunity, and Pat, happy to take some questions.
Thank you. And we've given the opportunity to have Juan translate the opening statements. I believe you're pretty fluent in Spanish. If you'd like to give your brief opening statements in Spanish, you're more than welcome to do that.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Yo agradezco mucho la oportunidad para hablar con ustedes esa noche. Yo estoy en esta campaña para el Senado porque yo pienso que ustedes merecen más de parte de su senador. Si hay algo que conecta la elección del presidente Trump, el pandemia de COVID-19 y este momento de justicia racial, es que tenemos un gobierno que está muy desconectado de su gente. Y veamos eso en una economía donde una familia de clase media casi no puede sobrevivir, en un sistema de salud donde los que están enfermos no pueden tener la ayuda que necesitan. Y también en un sistema judicial que roba las vidas de personas negras y morenas. Y tenemos una oportunidad ahora mismo para tener un senador que está luchando en la misma manera que usted está luchando por su familia cada día. Pero el senador Markey no vive aquí en Massachusetts. Él ha pasado menos tiempo aquí en el estado que el senador Warren cuando ella tenía su campaña para ser presidente. Pero él todavía ha perdido más que una mitad de los votos en Washington también durante esta época de COVID-19. Y finalmente, si él quiere llevar a cabo el cambio que él dice y que ustedes merecen, tiene que estar en nuestro país haciendo ese empuje y creciendo nuestra campaña para llevar a cabo el cambio. Pero él no estaba diciendo eso tampoco en 2019, cuando necesitamos nuestro senador lo más. Él no viajó a ningún otro distrito ni ningún otro estado para luchar por nosotros. Y yo pienso que en ese momento usted merece más y merece mejor.
Thank you. Juan, how was that?
Más o menos. Gracias,
All right.
Juan.
Thank you very much. So we have a few questions. Housing. The Fair Cloth Amendment has prohibited creating new units of public housing. Would you introduce a Senate version Homes for All Act of 2019 from Rep. Ian Omar to repeal Fair Cloth and reinvest in 12 million new units of public and affordable housing?
Yeah. Look, I absolutely support repealing the Fair Cloth Amendment. I've been on record on this for a while, and I've actually signed on to Senator Warren's bill that does something very similar in terms of the investment in federal taxpayer dollars in the construction of new housing. So, yeah, absolutely necessity, and we see this obviously in communities like Revere and many others across our Commonwealth.
Thank you. Police reform. Police operating within our schools has led to what has been referred to by many as school-to-prison pipeline. School resource officers hired to act as an independent law enforcement resource for schools to call upon when a law has been broken, or actively collaborate with school administration to police and enforce school policies, adopting zero-tolerance approach to enforce school rules. This inherent problem has led to a significant number of juvenile delinquencies cases in communities where SROs are employed, stemming from incidents that arise in school that somehow escalate into delinquency matters. These matters have severe, immediate, and collateral consequences on the child's ability to learn and become productive members of society. Criminal records impact everything from the ability to get an education, to serve in the military, become gainfully employed, and immigration status. These issues also impact students' Fourth Amendment right to free and of lawful searches and seizures. Would you support legislation that clearly defines a police officer's role in school to help ensure all students are provided equal opportunities for education without being subject to zero tolerance policies enacted by schools and police who enforce such policies?
Yeah, I would, Patrick, absolutely. And I think, look, we absolutely need to make sure that we are building to a place where hopefully one day you don't need police officers in schools. And the school to prison pipeline has demonstrated that keeping people out of that, keeping people out of the judicial system and the justice system is far more effective than after they get into it. And so we need to be investing in things like nurses and mental behavioral health counselors and upstream interventions to ensure that kids are getting the access to the resources and such that they need, rather than, again, trying to fall in the criminal justice system to solve every challenge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the last question, immigration. Would you work with Rep. Ayanna Pressley and the movement for the Black Lives M4BL to introduce a Senate version of the BREATHE Act?
Look, I think the BREATHE Act is an extremely, and I give Congresswoman Pressley a lot of credit for this, an extremely ambitious, visionary statement about the types of reforms that we need, from our military to our criminal justice system to our civil justice system, to so many different aspects of our society. And so I've been a vocal proponent of a lot of the pieces in there. The bill itself hasn't been introduced, but I think absolutely that the content of what it contains and what it aspires to is something that I think all of us can agree on.
Thank you. And you have 2 minutes of closing statements.
I'll be real quick on this one, guys, and apologies for kind of rushing through this, and grateful for, again, the opportunity to speak with you and to be with you tonight. Look, I think that I think we're in a moment of reckoning for our country, and that this election is like more than almost any other. It's about our future, and a future that I believe is big and bold and bright, even in the midst of the pain and the disruption of COVID-19. But we're only going to get there if we have folks that are willing to fight for it and do everything we can to arrive at it. That future doesn't just happen; it is earned and it is fought for. And I would love nothing more than the honor and the opportunity to be able to serve along that journey with you in the U.S. Senate, because I don't think we're going to get there with the same old folks doing the same old thing for this yet again and expecting a different result. So I'd ask for your support. I'm grateful for your consideration, and I hope to earn your vote and your endorsement. Patrick, thank you so much for having me, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Same to you, and thanks for being on, and good luck in 21 days.
Thanks, my friend.
Congressman Kennedy. Next up, Jan Dumas is going to introduce or interview Senator Ed Markey, or his surrogate. Jan, over to you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Unfortunately, Senator Markey had a previous scheduled event, and in his place, Mr. John Walsh is joining us. So thank you very much for joining us. And would you just give a brief 2-minute introduction for us of your representation for the senator?
Here. Please unmute yourself, John.
I do. I got it. Thank you. And Juan, I see your note about giving some pauses, which I will do.
Thank you.
And first of all, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity and to bring you greetings from your neighbor, Ed Markey. Unfortunately, at this time, the schedule is jammed full, and before he got the invitation to be here, he had accepted another invitation, so he is doing a very similar thing on another Zoom channel right at the same moment.
Muchas gracias, y por favor acepten los saludos de su vecino, el senador Ed Markey. Desafortunadamente, antes de recibir la invitación del comité de Revere, él había aceptado una invitación de otro comité, y entonces estamos todos dividiendo el tiempo, y está en este preciso momento en otra llamada de Zoom en otro compromiso.
Senator Markey has a long connection to Revere. In the year I've been working with him, the number of times I've heard him tell me stories of his time at Revere Beach, the number of times he makes the car take a spin by, and when we have 10 minutes, enjoy the scenery and share the memories. You and Ed Markey are connected by a long line.
El senador Markey tiene una historia larga con los residentes de Revere, ya que tiene una historia larga de visitar a la playa de Revere y además fue el congresista de Revere por mucho tiempo. Entonces el senador es uno de ustedes.
Senator Markey also enjoys a tremendous amount of support from many people in the Revere community, and I want to just say thank you for that. I will avoid making any mistakes by making a list, but I see many faces, or at least the names in front of the faces of people who've been very helpful in the campaign.
El senador Markey también goza del apoyo de muchas personas de Revere, muchos de ellos están con nosotros aquí. No voy a dar la lista de las personas, pero yo veo sus nombres y los veo aquí y pues les doy las gracias y él le da las gracias por el apoyo que ustedes tienen con y para él.
And Markey is seeking another term in the United States Senate for 6 years that will continue the work he has done for decades on behalf of the people and communities in Massachusetts.
El senador está buscando la reelección para otro término en el Congreso de Estados Unidos como su senador para continuar el trabajo que ya viene haciendo para las familias trabajadoras y para personas como ustedes y para todas las personas de aquí de Massachusetts.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you so much for the translation. So our first question for you tonight is on police reform. In response to the civil unrest and protesting that has swept across our nation, in response to police brutality and the perpetual killing of unarmed Americans of color at the hands of police, President Trump has vowed and advocated to dominate the streets. We've seen examples of this authoritarian response from our federal government in cities like Portland, Oregon, and New York City. The question is twofold. First, what impact do you think the president's authoritarian words and subsequent actions have on our First Amendment rights to free assembly and protest of government and our free press's ability to cover these protests? And second, how would you respond to the president? How would you respond if the president sent federal troops into our cities in the Commonwealth, such as Boston or Revere, for example?
President Trump's words are continuously hurtful. They bring fear to people who already have issues and worries about security. Those words matter. And Ed Markey has spoken fiercely against the president on a consistent basis. He has the highest record, the highest percentage of voting against Donald Trump appointees of any member of the United States Senate.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Can I add one more thing?
I actually had another minute.
Yeah. No, I thought it was still translating.
Yes, thank you.
That's just for the opening. Okay, thank you. So the words of the president really matter, and that is important. One of the other things I believe that Senator Markey would say to you if he was here, he also realizes that President Trump's words are motivating to us as Democrats. It is true to take to the streets. It is true to raise our voices, to demand change and to pray for change and to work for it. But equally true to move those protests into the voting booth, to institute a new leadership in this country. He would use the phrase, once we fumigate the White House with Donald Trump and we take the Senate and remove the gavel from the hands of Mitch McConnell. So while the president's words are hurtful and they create negative impacts, it is essential for us to take the motivation behind that to elect and re-elect leaders who are going to fight against that agenda and for an agenda of justice.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is on immigration. Do you believe there should be a pathway to naturalization for undocumented immigrants?
Senator Markey has been a strong voice for immigrants. Just 2 years ago, he was named Man of the Year by Mira. In the current pandemic, Senator Markey was the first person to call for the end of deportations. He has had, I'm just going to, and I apologize, I'm going to look at some notes here because his recitation, the recitation of his record on immigration is deep and strong. Senator Markey would say to you, yes, all of the DACA residents, yes, all of those who are here that are important and contributing members of our community, a full pathway to citizenship. Our country needs immigrants. I will say he is a second-generation American. I share it with him because I am the son of immigrants myself, that immigrants have always been our strength. Our system has had problems, but the people who are here are the ones who are making our country strong. Senator Markey's record on immigration is 2 pages long. He is the leader on this in the United States Senate. He's worked with Congresswoman Presley. He's worked with Senator Cory Booker and others to make our immigration policy fair and just, and yes, to provide a pathway to citizenship for everyone who is here.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our final question tonight is, for too long, the nation's transportation system, and especially here in Massachusetts, have been a barrier to economic opportunity, perpetrated and exacerbated inequality and harming the environment. The COVID-19 crisis has exposed the impact of that old normal. Transportation is the largest source of air pollution in Massachusetts and the largest contributor to climate change, both in the Commonwealth and across the nation. Recent studies have shown that air pollution may be a key contributor to COVID-19 mortality rates. Communities of color in Massachusetts have 26 to 36% higher exposure to particulate matter as a result of vehicle emissions. What have you done as senator on addressing these fundamental inequalities?
So on the issue of transportation, Senator Markey has continuously been a national leader on the issue of transportation justice, on the issue of environmental justice, obviously as the co-author of the Green New Deal with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The Green New Deal is written with frontline communities at the front of the line, with an effort to make transportation and all other contributors to our climate crisis, that we provide a solution and a one that it deals with the intersectionality of all these problems. In recent months, Senator Markey has co-sponsored with Representative Presley an act called the Freedom to Move Act, which is a way to make public transportation affordable, because there are so many people that depend on it, where the cost of transportation is over a third of their budget. Fixing that not only contributes to the economic security of families, it also contributes to the environmental justice and safety of all our communities. Senator Markey is a member of the Infrastructure Committee. So the funding for these kind of things, he's also proposed a plan called the Brain Train, which is a intercity high-speed rail service that will connect the Commonwealth and connect the cities in the Northeast in a clean electric future. On all these issues, Senator Markey has been a leader, and he's pledged to continue to do so in the next term.
Thank you so much. And you now have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and we do appreciate your joining us today.
Well, I'm very grateful for the invitation, and I appreciate the opportunity. There are 20 days left. A couple of months ago, we stopped calling September 1st Election Day, and we started calling it the last day to vote. We would urge everyone to not only vote yourself, but to reach out, as this committee does all the time, to build a grassroots movement to bring as many people to the polls as possible. We believe that voting by mail is the safest option. You and your family have applications sent to your homes. If anyone is misplaced it or trying to figure out where to go to get that application, you can apply to your local clerk by email on edmarkey.com/vote. It's a very simple process. When Senator Markey embarked on this reelection campaign, we started in a situation to be down by 14 points. Because of who he is, because of his record, because of his accomplishments and his agenda, that race has closed dramatically. And now we believe that all our measurements and all measurements show that Senator Markey's position has improved dramatically. The race is close. What we would ask everyone to consider the senator's record of accomplishment, his leadership on the issues that matter to people, and his record of delivering for the people of Massachusetts and particularly the city of Revere. I want to thank you again for giving me an opportunity to represent him tonight, and to thank all of those that are here for your support in his campaign. And if there's anything, I think many of you know, but my wonderful colleague Juan Gallego is available. We have phone banks every week, and we'd be happy to plug you in and to ask and give you tools to help push the vote out in the last 20 days. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hey, thank you so much. We are out of time. It was wonderful speaking to you today.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm actually gonna turn it to Shema for just one more minute.
Hello. I would like to thank all the candidates who presented themselves today. Thank you very much for taking all the time and energy to be here. I just want to present just some upcoming important dates. Just a reminder. The deadline to register to vote is August 22nd. To deliver your mail-in ballot application to your local election office by August 26th. Vote in by mail-in ballot, early voting, or on primary day is September 1st. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Shema. And again, thank you to all the candidates and to our moderators for our wonderful candidates forum brought to you by the Revere Democratic City Committee. If you want to get in touch with us or get involved, you can email us at reveredems, DEMS, @gmail.com, or you can send us a message on our Facebook page. So this is our closing for tonight, and this concludes our live candidates forum. So thank you again for joining us, and all of the elected members of the city committee, please stay on and we will continue the rest of our meeting. Have a great evening, everybody.